Hey everyone, Kaitlin here. Welcome back to another episode of Baldwin Breakdowns, where we're looking at big concepts, big ideas, and lots of big feelings in under 10 minutes. And so this week's topic is emotional regulation. I think this one was tied with like 10 votes for this and 10 votes for self-energy, which is what I'm going to do for the topic next week. And I put it in the caption of every video, but if you ever want to have impact or be able to vote on what topics I present next, make sure to follow Baldwin Psychotherapy on Instagram, and I post those polls every Tuesday in my stories. So emotional regulation, the broad definition is that it's our ability to regulate our own emotional state. And I have some issues with this right off the bat because there are a lot of misconceptions about what it takes to regulate your own emotions. And I think the biggest thing of this is that it is largely misunderstood as an agent of willpower, that it is something fully within our conscious control. And this kind of ignores the biggest part of emotional regulation and emotions in general, which is our autonomic or unconscious responses that largely come from our nervous system and from a lot of kind of unconscious beliefs and ideas and fears that we have about the world around us. So my issue with emotional regulation, the way that it's commonly defined, is that it's kind of suggesting that each person in any given moment should have the skill set, the knowledge, and the know-how to think, okay, I am really, really anxious right now. I'm going to stop this anxiety. Or I feel really, really angry right now, and I'm going to reduce this anger immediately. And it kind of suggests that it happens in those moments, but there's also a ton of proactive stuff that needs to happen and be in place for us to be able to effectively regulate our emotions. And so the point that I'd like to really try and make here is that emotional regulation, in a broad sense, shouldn't just be about, changing or reducing or fixing our emotions, but rather being able to notice what emotions come up and not even reduce their intensity, but reduce the impact and the hold and the fusion that they have with us in those moments. So I can, in a single moment, I can notice that I feel really, really angry. And if I'm unregulated, then I might, have a big impulsive reaction where I start screaming and yelling and freaking out at people. Whereas if I have the ability to regulate, and again, kind of with all this proactive stuff that also needs to come along with it, and with this attention on the nervous system in particular, I may have that same level of anger, but I'm going to notice that I'm angry, kind of be able to step back and observe it, and then respond in a relatively calm way. So I want to really drive home the point that emotional regulation, at least from my perspective and from my bias, isn't that we should move away from certain emotions, but that we should be able to recognize, be aware of, and create safety in any emotional state. So like I said, emotional regulation really comes down to nervous system regulation, which is just kind of often ignored, and it's a bigger part of like newer research around mental health and our emotions in general. But nervous system regulation has such a big impact and essentially like a direct correlation. It's almost the exact same thing. But also this mindful awareness. So this requires us to be able to be in the present moment. So part of being able to regulate ourselves is that we have to know what's currently going on. And so a lot of us might struggle with this and will struggle with emotional regulation because we're often thinking of past or future. If I feel really anxious about something, it's probably thinking about past or future, and I'm not in the present moment. So that emotional regulation requires us to be attentive and aware of what's going on in the present. We need to have safety, and I wrote perceived because our nervous systems have a constant perception of what is safe and what isn't. And I'm going to link a video somewhere in here, a previous video that I did about neuroception, which explains how our bodies and minds scan our environment for safety. But so we need to have the perception that whatever environment we're in is safe. And then we also need to have a balanced autonomic response. And this is again where our nervous system comes in. And there are a lot of things that can balance our nervous system. But what this means is that we need to be able to have a good balance between these kind of stressful, hyperactive states where we're going to feel a lot more anxious or angry, and our relaxed states. And if we don't have a healthy balance of those two, if we're chronically living in this anxious or angry or fight or flight state, then we're going to have a much harder time being able to regulate our emotions no matter what state we're in to start that. So that's something I'd really love to go into in a lot more detail in a future episode. If you're interested in that, let me know in the comments or send me a DM, literally anywhere. But that's emotional regulation, and I will catch you guys next week for our video on self-energy. Bye.